Neville's first Christmas. Early one morning, all the engines at Tim the sheds were getting ready to do their jobs. Percy was excited to meet the new engine, Neville. He knew little about him except from the day he had replaced Edward. Percy puffed in at the sheds. Once he arrived, he saw Neville. "Morning, Neville," Percy squeaked in excitement. Neville slowly opened his eyes to see Percy in front of him. He smiled softly. "Morning, Percy. What brings you here?" Neville replied in a soft tone. "I came to see you, for I've never talked with you. Edward's told us a lot about you." "Oh, has he now?" "Yes, indeed." Neville chuckled softly and slowly got fired up. "Well, it was nice to talk, Percy, but now I'm to head to Knapford Station," Neville stated. "All right," Percy jubilantly answered. "Merry winter holidays!" Percy puffed away. Neville quickly became sad. He puffed off to collect his cozies. As he pulled into Knapford Station, he admired the whole new look the station got. It made him feel at home. He could hear the passengers talking about Christmas. He tried to tune it out as well as he could, but it'd end up being no use. Along Edward's branch line, he'd get teary-eyed to all the decorations. At Sudbury, they even had a tree with lights, ornaments, and bubbles hanging on the branches. Neville sighed sadly. "It's never gonna feel the same again," he preached to himself. Soon, Rosie came from the docks to see Neville. She stopped on the line next to him. "Good day, Neville. Wait, why do you look sad?" Rosie asked. Neville didn't want to tell her. "It's nothing. I'm just a little cold, that's all." Rosie could tell there was something else going on, but she didn't want to take it too far. "If you ever need to talk, I'm here." Neville smiled. His whistle blew. "That's my whistle. Got to go. See you later, Rosie." "Indeed," she replied. The two left. Later, at Knapford Sheds, Neville stared at the stars. Edward came to check on Neville. He noticed how sad he was. "You okay?" he peered. Neville jumped. "Oh, yes, I'm just fine." Edward felt bad for Neville. "You can tell—" "It's nothing, Edward," he lashed out. Edward slightly shook. "If that's what you want to believe," he puffed off, slightly cross. Neville felt terrible that he had yelled at Edward. The next morning, it was Christmas Day. The engines at Tim the sheds were excited. But Neville was very upset. The Fat Controller arrived at Knapford Sheds. "Morning, Neville. I'm gonna have you do one thing today, and that's picking up the power generator for the tree lighting tonight." Neville gave him a sad smile. "The generator is waiting down at the docks for it arrived last night." "Right away, sir." "Oh, Neville. And one last thing. Merry Christmas!" The Fat Controller had cheered as he proceeded to walk away. Neville looked down. He puffed off sadly. Neville started to get in his feelings. He missed the old friends and celebrating Christmas with them. He continued to tell himself how much of a failure he had felt. Once he arrived at the docks, that was all that was on his mind. He felt he had to do more. He quickly puffed off with the generator. He left the generator in Natford Sheds. "I'll come back for that later," he said to himself as he went to find Gordon. Gordon, Neville, and the Fat Controller talked a bit about it, and the Fat Controller let Neville take the Christmas train. The Christmas special was a huge express train that started from Natford and went all the way to the mainland. It was non-stop. "I will be of use, I will be of use," he cried to himself as he started off. Once a long time ago, he was told to use his feelings as fuel to get him through his problems. As he quickly chuffed on the main line, he started to notice the heaviest snowfall. He'd still continued to power on, but he started to build up his doubts. I have to please, I have to please, he repeated in his head. He stormed down the line. He was lucky snow wasn't building up on the tracks. As he continued, his sadness started to well up again. Everything was going fine when he started to shake. "Oh no! Oh no!" he cried. Neville was hurt, but he wasn't going to let that stop him. He pushed on. He started to slightly bump around. His driver pulled his whistle to warn the signalman. The signalman diverted Neville off of the main line. That's when Neville's brake pipe burst. He tried to stop, but he couldn't. He raced on. He rolled and rattled up a bridge to find the bridge was out. "Oh my goodness!" he cried. He closed his eyes and it all happened at once. He plunged into a shallow river. He opened his eyes. Neville saw that both his crew and the coaches weren't with him. He cried and cried. "I'm a useless piece of scrap." At Tidmouth, the Fat Controller quickly drove straight to Edward. "Edward, I need you to rush to help Neville." Edward pouted. "I really don't want to be near him." "Edward, this is not a question. It's a requirement. You will go." Edward groaned and went to Tidmouth Station to collect the breakdown train. Edward came with the breakdown train to lift Neville from the river. Neville felt horrible. "Edward, be lucky I'm saving you," Edward interrupted. "Please, let me explain," he had pleaded. Edward sighed. "Fine. This is my first Christmas away from home, and I miss the ones that I love the most. I'm sorry for yelling at you. I let my feelings get the better of me, and overworked myself. I hope you can forgive me. I know you might be mad at me for taking your work away, but I couldn't control that," Neville wheezed quietly. "I understand, Neville. You don't need to repeat it, but I'll take your apology. It hasn't been easy getting my main job taken away from me. I guess we kind of feel the same." Edward looked back at him and grinned. Neville smiled at Edward. Edward took Neville to the Christmas party. As they arrived, everyone was complaining. Neville and Edward were confused. "What's the hustle about?" Edward whistled loudly. "There is no power for the tree lighting," complained Percy. Neville's eyes widened. "I know exactly where to find it." Edward looked back at him. You do?" Neville smiled. Yes, I left the generator back at Knapford Sheds to pick it up after my train. Take me there. Edward was uncoupled from the train and they sped off to Knapford Sheds. They found the generator. Edward backed into it. Edward, what are you doing? Cried Neville. If you can't pull it, I will. No, you'll get hurt. Edward strained. I'll be fine. Edward got the train moving. Neville was shocked. As they arrived back at the party, Edward wheezed to a stop. You're heavy, laughed Edward. Neville was set back onto the tracks as everyone cheered. The Fat Controller walked over to Neville. Neville, I shouldn't have pushed myself. I know. I hope this doesn't make you rethink anything, sir. Of course not. And I wasn't even going to say that. Neville's eyebrows perked up. Next time, just do your main job first, the Fat Controller laughed. Neville smiled as everyone laughed together. The generator was set up. The Fat Controller held the button on his hand to set off the tree. On the count of 3.
1, 2, 3! Merry Christmas! Merry Christmas to one and to all. Ho, ho, ho!